Welcome back to the channel, and today we're looking at the Carry Waypoint LC. This is the larger version of the original Carry Waypoint, and there's a good bit of differences besides the overall length. The bigger brother comes in a little over 8.5 inches, a hair over 8.5 inches long, so it's about an inch longer than its counterpart right here, and it has a 3.75 inch drop point, clip point they're calling it, blade of CPM MagnaCut steel, while the original one has a 3.3 inch Vanex super clean blade. And I don't know, I know the Vanex is even more corrosion resistant than MagnaCut. I don't know about the edge retention. I would guess they're pretty similar depending on how they heat treated the MagnaCut. The LC has a longer functional row of jimping here than the original, which just has a little small patch right there. And as you can see, the thumb studs stay out of the cutting path, and you also have a pretty good sharpening choil that should give you a good bit of sharpening life before it starts to widen back here. The original didn't have as much of a sharpening choil. After talking with the owner of Carry, he said this one is geared towards somebody looking for a bigger, heftier knife, because this one also has much bigger blade stock thickness than the original, coming in at 0.126 when the original is 0.086. So that's definitely going to affect the cutting performance. You know, this thin blade stock paired with this hollow grind make this thing perform really, really nicely, even though it's only 22 thousandths behind the edge. So it's not super thin, but you have the thin blade stock paired with that thin hollow grind. It slices very, very well. This one is going to be a little bit tougher with that thicker blade stock. This one still has a nice hollow grind, but it's about 23 thousandths instead of 22 thousandths. But that paired with the thicker stock, it's not going to be as slicey as the smaller version. I don't remember if he said it or not, but I really, really hope they do this exact knife in this particular form with the thinner overall dimensions all around. You know, you have a much thinner scale thickness. I could fit these titanium scales in these liners right here, and it's a noticeable difference. Now this one's more comfortable because of the thicker handle scales, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's see how this blade performs. The knife definitely came with a good edge out of box. It doesn't feel as slicey as the original. I'll have to measure all that for the actual review, but it is slicing well. You know, a hollow grind I find in this type of material does slice well usually, unless it's not a deep hollow grind. But yeah, it's got that longer blade, so I can make longer cuts, and so far so good. The ergos, I expect them to be good because these are thicker scales. They're contoured. There's nothing really, you know, it's a broomstick style handle, nothing to really get me blocked out on it or anything, and nothing poking or prodding me. You got the wire pocket clip that stays out of the way of my palm, luckily. Just depends if you have, you know, large or extra large hands. Maybe your hand would sit on that wire pocket clip, but for me, you know, it's good. And hopefully you saw that earlier. I was easily able to make the fine curls with the edge it had, and right now I'm just kind of forcing a lot of pressure into the wood just to see if I feel any kind of hot spots or anything. That's why I do this anyway, and I also do it to check the edge. But so far so good, no hot spots. And now to the 1/2 inch sisal rope. Now I'm gonna have to tell y'all, we get, I don't know, probably halfway through the sisal rope, and this was the 5th knife I tested that day, and the blisters had gotten pretty bad, so I shut it down and I have to pick it up the following day. So if you see the scenery change, that's why. I think I even put it on the screen, but it's slicing pretty well. Once again, that thinner edge on the original it slices better, in my opinion. I mean, that's just, you know, the fact of it. And I'm sure it will also feel even better once I put my own edge on it. I don't know what size bevel they have on here. It could be a thick bevel for all I know. But that's something I do anyway, pretty much after all these tests, because if you're wanting to get your edge retention up on your knife, sharpen it. I usually notice that it takes about three different sharpenings before you get that max potential. Sometimes it takes more. And that's usually because you could have a fatigued apex from them sharpening it on a belt grinder, which causes a lot of friction. This is what I'm talking about right here. So I did have to swap it up, and this is the following day. And we end up getting through, I think, 112 pieces of 1/2-inch sisal rope before I ran out of the piece that I cut. And yeah, that's good. The edge still feels great. We'll test it after we get done with the testing. But you know, I'm impressed. I wish I would have found out what the HRC is on this, because that would kind of give me a better idea of how much further I could have went here compared to some of the other Magna Cut knives I've tested, which I've tested a lot. I like the steel, but if it's not heat treated to that optimal range, it definitely shows. Now, I can probably get that tip down on the things, but it's just a lot easier to use that belly. The tip is a little bit higher than I like, because you have more belly. But I found with knives over 3 1/4 inches long, it's not as big of a deal where that tip is, because you have a lot more of a straight edge. But I like the way this one performed. I was more than happy and impressed with the knife. Let's test that edge after the cutting. Yeah, still a good edge, very good edge. Pretty impressed. Look at that. Nice. Now let's take a look at the deployment of the knife. This is a dual thumb studded knife. They stick up past the scales, so it's easy to get your thumb on them, and they're fairly comfortable. This one has a pretty stout detent. It comes rocketing out, and it's that same glassy smoothness that I've come to love with quiet carry knives. It is riding on phosphor bronze washers, and mine has broken in very nicely. It's not a free drop or anything, but it rockets out, and just that glassy smoothness whenever I'm closing it is just outstanding. I love this type of action. I love a bearing action as well. I just like them to be smooth, and if you own some phosphor bronze washered knives, you know how smooth they can actually get. My original Waypoint is super smooth, and this one is breaking in very nicely as well. Those thumb studs are comfortable. I can't really reverse flick it the way it's set up. Maybe if I push, let me try. Yeah, if I push off right here, I can, but it's just too hard for me to get my finger underneath there, and then you have to go this way with it. If you try to go straight up, you know, it's not going to work as well. You got to push out. The action's good, like I said, and the detent is nice and positive. Can't shake it out. And since they have the clip on the left side as well, it's easy to manipulate left-handed also, even though that locks on the opposite side. Now let's take a look at the handle area. This particular one has G10 scales. It's got that beautiful milling pattern, just like on this titanium version. I love that milling. It gives you a good bit of grip on the G10 especially. And you got a nice chamfer going all the way around, and these scales are ever so slightly contoured, making it feel really nice in hand, especially with that added thickness. Your pivot is a Torx T8, and your body screw and your clip screw are all T8. Love seeing that. Got your signature 4 holes that quiet carry does on both sides, and the milling pattern is carried over on this side, but right here only, and then you got smooth G10. I'm okay with that, because that's where that clip sits, so it's not a pocket shredder. That's excellent. The wire pocket clip works outstanding, especially being on this smoother surface, and it sits very deep in the pocket. This is a titanium liner lock, and if you can see in there, you do have a hardened stainless steel insert that's made of LC200N, so you don't have to worry about this knife rusting on you. You have a black G10 backspacer that is flush with the titanium scales. They did a really good job there. And they pocketed out those titanium liners as much as they could on the top and bottom to reduce the weight as much as possible. bringing the weight to 126 grams or 4.46 ounces. The lockup on mine sitting at around, I'd say 40% or so, and now that you can see that hardened stainless steel lock insert right there and the 2 screws. Mine is nice and solid. I have no play up or down, left or right. Access to the lock bar is outstanding because this comes down lower. It's very easy to get my thumb in there. Now for some quick size comparisons, it's about identical in length to the ZT0640, and as you can see, it's much bigger than the Quiet Carry Drift LC. It's also very similar in length to the Ontario Rat 1 and the Civivi button lock Praxis. And it's also longer than both the Spyderco PM2 and the Hogue Ritter RSK. Nitpicks and complaints. These are just nitpicks because it's nothing hurting the functionality of the knife. I would love to see this ground a little bit thinner or use thinner blade stock. However, I get it. They're trying to make this one a, more of a like work style knife. It's a thicker, more robust knife than its counterpart here. I would really, really love to see one thin like the original one, especially thin blade stock, still thin hollow grind. All that said, this one still performed great. It was very, very comfortable in hand, and I absolutely love that silky smooth action on those phosphor bronze washers. I've always liked the Waypoint. It's a very streamlined knife, no frills, but that's the reason I like the knife as much as I do, and that's why I absolutely love the Quiet Carry brand. They do some very elegant yet simple designs that just really resonate with me. And I think I've tried out every model that they produce so far, and I have not been disappointed yet. So tell me what you think. Have you bought one of these, or are you planning on buying one? If you are interested in picking up one of these, they are available. I will link them down in the description. They have the black G10 and also like the slate blue color G10 as well. And I think they go for around $295. They're a smaller, more boutique company, so they're going to be a little bit more expensive. They're using premium materials, Magna Cut, Vanex, and titanium liners that are about as thick as these titanium liners on the original. And this one is a liner lock as well. It's just got titanium over the top of it. So, love to hear y'all thoughts. What do y'all think about it? And if you own any Quiet Carry knives, let me know what you think about them. And I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.